Good morning.
Good morning, Laura.
How are you doing?
Not bad. Trying not to go too crazy from staying locked in all day, but I'm doing pretty well, all things considered.
Well, thank God for that. Will you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure thing. My name is Dave. I currently work in healthcare on the IT business side of health insurance. Is there anything else that you want me to go over?
No, just wanted to know who you are and a little bit about you.
Oh, okay.
Now, I know that my husband has been working with you for years before he really embraced a lot of the healing work and clearing work and et cetera that he does now, but you've received a lot of guidance. Will you please take us back to your initial communication with my husband and let us know what happened and what you experienced?
Sure thing. So, wow, this takes me back a while now. So I started getting guidance from Ken about, I want to say, 8 to 9 years ago now. And initially, it was just me being wanting to be on a path of self improvement. And I felt like there was a lot of things in my life that could have used a lot of improvement. So as I was trying to grow and trying to become the best version of myself, I found that I guess I didn't really find Ken, and Ken didn't really find me, but we had been we're actually family friends. So when the time finally came where we got together and sat down to talk, it was funny enough. Ken said, "Oh, David, you're late." And I'm like, "What?" So I thought that was kind of funny, and apparently, at the end of it, we said, "Well, better late than never. Let's get started." And so, uh, at the time, at that time in particular, there was a couple of things that was going on um, that I found a little bit concerning. A
Okay.
little bit physically, a little bit mentally, and a little bit spiritually. So, from a physical, mental aspect, I've been a cigarette smoker since I was 16, 17 years old. And so I'd been smoking cigarettes for most of my adult life. And so I'd reached a point where I'd wanted to quit. And it was tough. I mean, when it comes down to something like addiction and that physical and mental dependence on a chemical, it's very overwhelming and it's a lot. It's not as it sounds very simple, but it's not quite easy. And so I'd been wanting to try to quit smoking, and it was more of a private affair at the time. So I just, tried to quit cold turkey, but that just kind of the physical addiction aspect of it really just wore on me. Mental, like just because it would with the physical withdrawal symptoms that I would get would build up throughout the day, and like my body would shake a little bit. I'd get irritated very, very easily. I was just not pleasant to be around. And so uh, I would try to sneak cigarettes at night to try to take the edge off. But eventually that just became full blown. I'm still smoking again. Nothing had really changed. I really wasn't quitting. And so that was one of the first things that I wanted to address with Ken as far as that addiction goes. And so that conversation was a little funny where
Mhm.
he said, do you want to quit? And I said, yeah, absolutely, I want to quit. And he said, have you thought about giving it to God? And immediately, I was kind of a jerk about it. I said, yeah, I'll do that. And he's like, don't be stupid. And I was like, oh, sorry. And he basically from a logic standpoint of is is there anything that God cannot accomplish? I said, no, there's nothing he can accomplish. And can all things be done through him? And isn't this something that's bigger than yourself? And so, kind of a shock to my ego, but recognizing that truth. And so I said, all right, we'll give it up then. And so, that was something that I'd always assumed that I would always be addicted, and it's something that would always kind of follow me for the rest of my life. And
Mhm.
I guess I didn't realize that it was that healing that I required. That once I got over the physical addiction of it and the psychological addiction went away too, uh, I guess just that spiritual dependence, which I know sounds a little bit obscure, but um, like I've gotten accustomed to taking the edge off by going out for a cigarette. Like that was my typical go-to as my mental coping mechanism. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I mean, I was using that in every aspect to calm down, get a moment's peace, and so I found myself always using a drug, for lack of better words, to try to calm myself and to center myself. So not that exactly the healthiest way to build up spiritual health. So
Hmm.
I hadn't realized it at the time, but that was definitely something that I needed healing in all three aspects: that physical addiction, the psychological addiction, and really even the spiritual addiction that or dependence rather that I've grown accustomed to. And so, you know, through the guidance that Ken was providing, um, you know, with the work of the, with that work and that healing, I was able to get over it. And so, um, yeah, and so now it's, I haven't smoked in since then, which is about 8 years ago. So, thank God
Wow.
for that. Yeah, it's been pretty awesome. So,
In our, we have published a video talking about smoking, alcohol, and drugs, and how they have their own entity that is formed and created, and how we've dealt with many individuals who like had these physical attacks from these entities. Did you experience anything like that?
well, I did, but I did not think they were related at the time because I think that with everything going on at that time in my life, I didn't think that they were related, and maybe that's where it was so dangerous. Um, so while I was going through this period of wanting to quit smoking and wanting to improve myself, I found it very challenging, and it felt very lonely at times. So there was that aspect of it, but the one thing that I couldn't really explain was that uh, I would wake up and I would find scratches and marks on on my body. And my natural assumption actually was that, oh, it's because I have dry skin and I'm scratching myself while I sleep, and that's what it is. And it's just I'm not conscious of it, and that's what I'm doing just in the middle of the night. Um, but some of the scratches looked a little obscure, where it wouldn't have looked like I was scratching
Hmm.
because of dry skin. So, but I never really thought about it, and I never really considered it, um, and I didn't really think about it too much. But as I kind of continued down this path, uh, I would start to feel presences that were not friendly, and
Oh,
I would find them in my apartment, and um, like I remember on the morning of my 30th birthday, I felt a hand kind of crawl across my chest, almost like it was trying to go into my heart. Um,
oof.
and the funny thing was, is that at the time I'd gotten so used to those presences being there that my reaction was, "Are you serious? It's my birthday," and then it went away. So
What?
yeah, I know. Just a really like, I guess that's I just gotten so used to that being there with me that um, it didn't seem unusual. If that makes sense.
Yes.
There was
You
another
became
time.
accustomed to it and you rationalized a lot of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Wow.
And then there was another time that not too long, maybe like 2 weeks before that, that I woken up and I was lying on my side, and I know I was awake, and I was face to face with something where we were literally just almost making eye contact. And
Wow.
from what I could feel and from what I could make out, because this I guess this presence or this entity was translucent, and the eyes were like prisms. And so as I was telling Ken about that, he was like, "Yeah, that's a negative attachment or a program or something that is hanging around your place and is causing you that kind of harm." And again, I think that's the weird thing, is that I got so used to that sort of thing being in my life that I wasn't scared, even though I probably should have been. Um, yeah, but it was really, but
I would
I'm
have
used to it.
been
Yeah.
scared. I would have been like, I would have been screaming. Wow, that's fascinating. So, do you have those experiences any longer?
So I still get the scratches, to be honest, and I notice that when I feel like I am struggling with something in particular, where I'm overly upset about something, I'm overly frustrated by something, and even though I want to do the right thing, even though I want to keep my calm, even though I don't want to react, even like I find that those mornings that if that's what I experienced the night before, when I wake up the next day, I will tend to find that I have kind of like scratches on myself, and that um, for lack of better words, it looks like I got attacked. Um, which, to be honest, that after speaking with Ken and after getting that guidance, that's clearly what that is. It's an actual physical attack on me. For whatever reason, that they're unhappy that I'm trying to do good, I guess. So
Okay.
yeah.
Now, that's that's what happens to you still now. Does that correlate to, because I know you send us messages needing or just requesting help. Hey, could your husband please check me? And does it usually correlate with something being there? Because I don't normally get all those updates.
Oh, I'd probably say almost every single time yes. That
Hmm.
And I think that's the one thing is that as I've been working with Ken and as we've been talking about this and working through this together, um, I can actually feel a difference. And like so, when I first moved out on my own, one of the things that I wanted to do was stop eating fast food. And so, unrelated, but this will make sense.
Okay.
So I stopped eating fast food altogether. And so when I remember maybe about 2 months afterwards, I went to a Wendy's and I was eating, and I could almost feel my blood slow down. I could almost feel my heart slow down a little bit. And that when I was taking in like the refined sugar from from a Coke.
Okay. Okay. It's still recording. Sorry. You were
Are we
saying,
still good? Okay.
yeah, we're still good. If you're saying refined sugar from a Coke.
Okay, yeah. So as I was drinking a Coke, I could feel my eyes start to go all over the place. It was hard for me to concentrate. I could actually feel a physical difference from not having had soda or fast food in a long time. So just having that sensitivity even come back, uh, I felt a very similar thing recently with having worked with Ken for a while. That after going through healing and after maintaining through decrees, I found that when I start getting annoyed or overly frustrated or overly angry about something, that
Mhm.
it didn't feel natural. And for a very long time, it actually felt normal. And one of the things that uh, I would always be criticized for by a lot of my friends and family was that I always looked angry about something, and I was always frustrated about something. And uh, after working with Ken and getting that guidance, a lot of those negative feelings and those negative, you know, like I guess for lack of better words, possessions was gone, and I finally felt calm, and I felt this weight lifted off my shoulders, and
Wow.
yeah, and it was amazing. And then to me, and then more recently, that became the norm of being able to move fluidly and not have this weight on my shoulders, figuratively speaking. Although, funny enough, that um, the symptoms are more physical. That when I'm bothered by something or I feel like something it wants me to embrace negative feelings, then
Mhm.
I try not to. I actually start to feel some physical pain. Um, there was once where I was feeling some like just really like nasty muscle cramps in my calves, and it was really hard for me to walk for about 3 days. And after I reached out to Ken about it, um, he said there was no physical because I hadn't run or I hadn't done I wasn't playing basketball or football, and
Right.
there was no reason for me to have this sudden pain, and it just appeared. And so Ken did some healing work, and he said that there was some negative attachments and negative programs around, which is the cause of it. And almost instantaneous. Like literally the next day, pain was gone, never came back.
And
So,
it took you 3 days to reach out?
well, I thought, and okay, yeah, and I guess I'm still stuck in the, oh yeah, that sounds normal. Like I don't know why that's like like I'm getting more sensitive, and that's really on me that I need to work on, and that I need to be a little bit more diligent on. Is that of that sensitivity? Although I will say I got a little bit better, and that I am, I'm trying not to be a nuisance. 'Cause I feel like almost every day I'm like, hey, I'm mad about something, and then my arm hurts. Can you look into that? So,
Right. Well,
uh,
no, it's good that you do that though, because that helps us help you as quickly as possible so you can, stay elevated with your energy and frequency there. So that's very
no.
good.
Oh, absolutely. And so, and now I stop feeling bad, and I'm like, Laura and Ken know what I'm doing, and they asked for this, so it's okay if I bother them at midnight. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So it's been, and I think that's what has been the biggest adjustment is that recognizing what is natural versus supernatural within what I can feel, whether it be pain or discomfort or uh, frustration. So whatever it is, there's a certain way that I'm supposed to be, and there's a certain way that I'm supposed to think and feel. And after getting that guidance, I definitely feel that clarity, and it's a certain level of lucidness that, like when I'd be traveling, I travel a lot for work, and
Hmm.
about, I travel, I go out about on average about once a month, and for about a week, and so even when I travel and I'm around all these different people, and I go to these places that I'm usually not at, uh, if I'm a little susceptible at the time, then I start feeling these, like I'll get angry for no reason. And I notice that. I go, why am I so angry? Like
Hmm.
I'm literally not doing anything, and I'm just getting frustrated. And before, what I used to think was, oh, it's because of you're frustrated with a work situation, and that's why it's normal to be angry and it's normal to be frustrated. And I used to tell myself these things. And so now I recognize that a lot of it, it's not normal. It's not natural. And so, and I feel very cloudy, almost in the same way that when I would drink or smoke cigarettes, is
Hmm.
that um, feeling of fogginess, except
Okay.
it's not quite the same, but I would feel a certain level of, yeah, I think like muddiness, fogginess is definitely the way I'd equate it to, and that what I started noticing, especially when Ken started doing more concentrated healing work, for I guess for lack of better words, that I would feel clear in the morning. That
Hmm.
you know, like um, like as if a fog had lifted, and I could finally see clearly everything that I wanted to see, and I wasn't bogged down, and I didn't feel hungover, from anger. Like none of those feelings were there, and at first it felt unusual because it felt very much like a band-aid being ripped off, and that clean feeling at first.
Yes.
And if I'm gonna be honest, like it was very unusual, and it didn't feel normal. But um, I realized that that's actually how I'm supposed to feel, and that's actually how I'm supposed to think, and that's how I'm supposed to be. And so now that when I start feeling these, uh, I guess like for me, I would call it like episodes of like fogginess.
Hmm.
That's usually when I'll reach out and say, "Hey, I'm feeling this. Maybe it's something, maybe it's nothing, but can you check on this for me?" And so usually that's when I'll reach out to you guys and leave you a note, and I'll probably say 95% of the time it's been something else, and it wasn't something that of me getting in my own way or me frustrating myself, because I'll be honest, that does happen, and I will do that at times, but
Right.
and it's not, like that feeling of frustration is a normal thing, I think, but not to the degree that I was feeling it. And so knowing those and recognizing that has been probably the biggest help, I'd say, like in my everyday life, really.
Now, thank you for sharing all of that information. I know you've received guidance, and specifically when you were living in Chicago, you were guided to leave Chicago. Will you please talk about how that guidance helped you and how quickly the time frames were and what happened with your job, all those details there?
Oh, absolutely. So, uh, about 9 years ago, 10 years ago, I had this feeling that I was supposed to leave Chicago, and you know, I'm a Chicago native, born and bred. My family was all there, but in a very the way my life was seemed to be unfolding, it kept pointing towards me leaving, and I didn't know what it was, but I kind of had a nagging suspicion that it was there. Within a year of that feeling coming across, my brother moved from Chicago to Portland. Uh, my parents ended up moving a few months after that from Chicago to Dallas, and so I was by myself for a while. And so I knew I was going to leave, and I didn't know how I was going to get the answer. I didn't know where or how I would come to that conclusion, but I knew something was coming. And so while I was getting ready, I guess while I was getting myself spiritually ready, um, I started noticing things started unfolding even in my personal life. That uh, one of the things that makes it very hard for people to leave is personal relationships, and it there were some personal relationships that I had that were not good for me at the time, and I started noticing that we started becoming more distant, and not by me or not by these people, but it was almost like a very natural flow where we started to just drift apart more naturally. And I started becoming more isolated and I started to feel a little bit more lonely. But I guess I didn't recognize it at the time, but a lot of that had to do with getting me ready to make my clean exit and make myself ready to leave, at the drop of a dime. And funny enough, it actually came at the drop of a dime. So about 7 years ago, I came out to California to do a church retreat, and I figured, you know what, let me also take a mini vacation for myself and get some time to myself, and just take some time away. And the entire time I was in California, I felt this nagging feeling that I should be here, I should live here, this is where I should be, and it was almost like I'd slowly start to lose my mind, and it was almost like a secondary thought. It just wouldn't leave me, and so the entire time I was in California, I just kept feeling that, and so I went back. I went back home, and it never left. For like every single day, I just kept having this feeling, and so I talked to a buddy of mine, and as we were talking about it, I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm getting this I'm getting this crazy thought that I should leave, and it's not my thought." And I felt weird telling him because I didn't want him to uh, call the police and have me institutionalized. But he, we both kind of concluded, well, clearly it came during a time of spiritual vulnerability when I'd opened myself up, and we were both like, this clearly seems to be a message from God that I should go. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I should go then. Like I guess I've been getting ready for this, and I should go." And so, you know, so we were together at that moment. I said, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it." So when we left and I went home, funny enough, there's a notice on my apartment door that says, "You're about to be evicted, and you got to move your stuff out within 2 weeks." So just the timing of that, and I'm pretty sure like you can't plan something like that. Um, and then, so funny enough, what happened a few years before that is I was renting from a private owner, and the lady who owned my apartment, she had been going through a pretty nasty divorce. So she told me about it. She shared that with me, and so I said, "Well, I don't." And she said, "Well, you're gonna have to move because I'm gonna stop paying the mortgage." And I said, "Well, what if I stayed? And what if I just gave you the cash so you could have some disposable income?" And I'm pretty flexible and I can move pretty quickly. So I'm not, because when I first moved, um, I found that place within a week, and within a week I moved into that place. So I
That was
felt
quick.
yeah, so I felt pretty confident that I'd be able to move relatively quickly. So and being single with no kids at the time, yeah, it made sense that it'd be easier for me to move so quickly. So I told her, I said, hey, listen, I don't mind if that's okay with you. To be honest, I was being lazy. I didn't want to move. So, but she was grateful, and that she had extra money coming into her pocket. And so when the timing of it all came down, I said, okay, clearly this is, a plan that God has created for me, and I need to lean into it. And so let's go. And so I guess I went into a bit of a crazy mode, but in a very fun sort of way. And it was very seamless. Like everything that I needed started appearing before me. Finding a moving company to move all my stuff over to California, how I would leave. All of it started happening very seamlessly, and so
Mhm.
it became very fun for me. And so, when I got that eviction notice, the next day I said, okay, clearly I have to go. Um, and whatever happens will happen. Let's go. So I
I
walked.
remember I remember you actually called and you're like, I have to talk to your husband. I need some guidance. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay. And when he got off the phone with you, he said, well, David's got to find a place to live. He's only got 2 weeks to do it. And he's asking for he asked for guidance on that. And then some things transpired from there. I know that's where you're going, but I just had to interject that. I remember that call when that came in. And I was like,
yeah.
what is David thinking?
Because it
But
was very
anyway.
sudden. Yeah, it literally came out of nowhere. It seemingly came out of nowhere, but just the timing of it all seemed to be it seemed chaotic, but to me it felt ordered and it felt natural. So it was just wild for me. So the next day, so after I talked to your husband, um, and he said, okay, lean with it, buy a flight, you'll find a place. Um, Oh, and so from that conversation that day of what should I be looking for, he said, um, one thing is you will look out your window from where you draw, and you will see palm trees. And I thought that was the worst guidance that I've ever received because I was moving to Los Angeles where there are palm trees everywhere. So I thought to me, I'll be honest, it kind of felt like a horoscope reading at that point of, oh, you're going to make a big decision today and you're going to meet somebody who is tied to your past. I was just like, all right, Ken. Yeah, but to be fair, like I got such good guidance before that I didn't really say anything. I said, okay, well, let's lean into it and let's go with it. So the following day, I walked into my manager's office. I handed her my 2 week notice of resignation, and so she looked at me and she goes, "What is this?" And I said, "I'm moving to California." And she said, "When?" I'm like, "2 weeks." And she goes, "What happened?" And she knew I was in California for a vacation, so she goes, "What happened in California?" And I said, at that moment, I thought, you know what? We were friends, so I said, you know what? Lean into it and just be honest. And I said, I think God is calling me to California, and I gotta go. And she said, "Do you have a job?" No. "Do you have a place to live?" No. "Do you have friends or family you can stay with?" No. And she was like, "And you're gonna just go?" "Yeah." And she was like, "Okay." And I said, "All right, cool. I gotta go find a flight." So I walked out of her office and I booked a flight for the following weekend so I can find the place. And I started going about my business about getting ready to move. A day or two later, I got called back into her office and she said, "Are you intent on leaving?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "What if we gave you a raise?" And I said, "No, unfortunately, no money will keep me here, and I gotta go where I'm supposed to go." So at the end of it, she said, "Would you consider staying with the company but working remotely?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." So she said, "Okay, we'll arrange it so that you can have a laptop and you can work from home, and we'll let you keep the raise as well." So in a weird sort of way, I got the money that I need. And I was actually a little concerned about that at first about, um, the cost of living in LA is a little bit higher than Chicago. So I was a little
Definitely.
worried at the time. Yeah. But then with that raise, that gave me more than enough money to be able to live comfortably in Los Angeles while keeping my job. So now I didn't have to find a job. And all I had to focus on was finding that apartment where I looked out the window and I saw palm trees, like everywhere in Los Angeles. So that following weekend, I flew out, and I found a place that when I got there, it felt right. Like everything, every fiber of my being kept screaming to me, "This is it." And a lot of the places that I looked at, it felt completely wrong or it felt dead. Um, where I felt uncomfortable, unsafe. Um, Even though there was no reason to feel those things, I was feeling those things in these places. But yet, when I found the place that I would eventually move to, it felt good and it felt warm and it felt right and it just felt
Were
like
the
everything
palm
about it.
trees outside the window?
I'm getting to that. So
Okay.
a few weeks later, when I actually ended up moving in, and as I'm getting situated with my apartment, and I was in one of those like those properties where they have hundreds of units and um, it's managed by a company. They have a pool, and so my personal apartment faced the inside of the courtyard rather than facing out into the street. And so,
Okay.
as it was because it faced inward, there was a little fountain area where people were walking, and you could look into that. And so, I was setting up my place, and I set up my drawing table by the window. And one night while I'm drawing, I'm looking up, and wouldn't you know it, palm trees. So the next day, I called and I said, "All right, clearly I found the right place because I'm looking outside and I see palm trees. So I guess we're right." So in a weird sort of way, it ended up being exactly what Ken had seen in his vision and the guidance that he had received. So he ended up being right after all, and I had to poke fun at him, but still, like, it was something else. Yeah, it was wild. I couldn't believe that that's what had happened.
Well, I'm glad you followed the guidance and you're able to get into the perfect place and the job opportunity continued. And that's a fabulous story. That's really nice to hear. Do you have any other stories you'd like to share or talk about before we end our call here?
Yeah, actually, there is one other story I do want to share with you guys. And it's one where I didn't follow the guidance and I decided to act out on my own. Um, there was a previous video about where you were sharing a story about a gentleman who got guidance about getting a new car, and he chose not to follow the guidance appropriately and decided to do
Mhm.
whatever he wanted. And I figure, you know what? Since this is going to be a YouTube confessional, I might as well come clean with it. I was that gentleman who didn't follow the guidance. I decided to act out on myself, on my own, and do whatever I wanted to do. And so, look, I mean, I have a car that I love. I ended up getting a car that I absolutely love it.
Uh-huh.
It is costing me an arm and a leg, and I work from home where I never have to drive. So I'm paying a lot of money for a car that I love that sits in my garage. And so it's it's a very it's a very deflating purchase that while I love this car, I love just looking at it when I go outside to throw away trash. And I'm like, wow, that's a really expensive
Dust
toy that
collector.
collector's item that's just like, sitting in my garage, not doing anything.
Oh, that's
So
hilarious.
yeah, so I wasn't punished, but clearly there was a better way for me to go about doing this, and uh, I chose not to, and I had to bear the brunt of it, and it didn't kill me, but at the same time, when I think about my experience relative to moving and how seamless and how perfect everything worked out for me by especially during a time when it was very chaotic and I didn't um there a lot of the things I didn't feel like I should trust it, but I did, and I walked forward confidently and with a smile on my face, and I felt really good about everything that had been going on. One thing is when I was moving, I remember one of the last nights in my apartment, I shipped all my stuff, and so the only thing in my apartment And my landlord had asked if she could come and take the door handles because she had put them in custom, so she wanted to keep them for herself. So
Oh,
yeah, so I mean it's a small detail, but now my apartment had no locks, and I was sitting, and there was nothing left in my apartment except for a dirty mattress, which I planned on leaving behind. And I said, well, when the bank comes to reclaim this place, they'll figure it out. They could throw the mattress away. So I'm sleeping on a dirty mattress on the ground in the dark, and I remember thinking, this is fun. And for a moment, I felt like, oh, this is what it's like to be homeless and living on the street. And I didn't know why I was so entertained by this notion, even though a lot of my friends who I was talking to at the time were terrified, and they said they were nervous. And they were nervous for me, and they kept they kept worrying about me, but I wasn't worried in the least. So it was a very I felt unnatural, but very naturally positive. And so when I decided to act out on my own, and because I was getting antsy and I really wanted a new car, I decided
uh-huh.
to act out on my own and then do it. And of course, I'm in a situation where I work from home and I never drive. So why am I spending so much money on a car that I never drive and I have no miles on? So um, it it's funny that I have such two polarizing events that really confirms for me the guidance and really confirms the teaching that it's not a feeling, it's more truth. It is something that's actually actively going on. And that was one thing that between one of the first conversations I had with Ken was about that. Was he said,
Hmm.
Dave, you don't have to trust it. Do everything you can to disprove it and test it. And so that was something that I really did take to heart. And I didn't intend to test it with my car, but I ended up testing it anyway. And so it ended up working out well. And I learned a lot from that experience. So, um, and Ken said, are you going to do that again? I said, no, I'm not going to do that again. So it ended up working out well for me anyway. So I'm a bit knuckleheaded, and sometimes I have to learn the hard way. So yeah, it ended up working out.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all's well that ends well, right? So,
thank
hey,
you for owning up to that story. We appreciate that.
of
I'm
course,
glad
of
things
course.
are working out well for you. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to go ahead and talk with us and share with us your stories. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, David.
Oh, it's been a blast, Laura. Appreciate this.
Thank you.